The lantern trembled in Daniel Morrow's hand, casting a quivering glow over the barn's rough-hewn beams. He had come for the usual check of the horses, the familiar rhythm of hooves and hay beneath his boots, but the silence that greeted him was different, thick, almost suffocating. Then a whisper shattered it. "Please, don't judge." He froze, every muscle coiling. The voice was fragile, raw with fear, but beneath it lay something else. Desperation, maybe shame. Daniel's hand instinctively hovered near his Colt, though his gut told him this wasn't a robbery or a fight. Not yet. The sound came again, this time closer, the words catching on the broken timbers. Please, I can't." Daniel's eyes adjusted to the dim glow. In the far corner, behind the stacked hay bales, a young woman knelt, hands clasped, shoulders trembling. Her dress was torn, dirt and blood streaked across her arms and face. She held something close to her chest, hiding it from view. The barn smelled of sweat, hay, and something coppery. Blood. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Not a command, not a threat. Just a human voice, cautious, gentle. She flinched but didn't run. I can't. If anyone sees..." Her voice cracked. She pressed the hidden bundle tighter. Daniel knelt slowly, setting the lantern on the floor. He studied her. There was terror in her eyes, but something else. A plea, as if the weight of the world rested on this single, fragile moment. He knew from years on the ranch that fear could freeze a person, make them unreadable, but it could also reveal truths that survival had carved into their bones. Outside, the wind rattled the barn door. Somewhere down the ridge, a coyote howled. The night stretched long, empty, and dangerous. "Look, I won't judge, but you have to let me see." Daniel's words cut off as the wooden door at the far end of the barn creaked. Someone, or so, me-thing, was approaching. Not the wind, not the horses. Slow, deliberate, dragging steps that carried both purpose and threat. The woman's eyes went wide. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Daniel's hand twitched toward his revolver. The lantern flickered and cast shadows across the floorboards, catching the glint of metal in her hands, a small, impossible object he couldn't yet comprehend. And then a voice, low and unfamiliar, rasped through the darkness outside the hay bales. "You can't hide her here, Daniel." Daniel's hand stayed close to his Colt, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he studied the woman, the tremor in her fingers, the rapid blink of her wide, fearful eyes. The object she clutched pressed against her chest, still hidden from view, yet it radiated an urgency he could feel in his bones. "I can't let them take you," he said quietly, more to himself than her. The words hung in the barn like smoke. Her gaze darted toward the door. "They'll come. They always come. And if they find me here..." Her voice choked. She shook her head violently, a desperate, brittle motion that seemed almost too small for the weight of her confession. Daniel stepped closer. "Then we'll keep you safe, at least for tonight. But I need to know. Why are they after you? Why are you hiding?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Because of what I carry, what I saw." She finally lifted her hands to reveal it, a small carved medallion of gold, oddly shaped, worn by time but unmistakably precious. Her eyes brimmed with tears. It doesn't belong to me, but if they take it, they'll destroy everything I love. They'll destroy me." Daniel's chest tightened. The choice was sudden, stark. Help her and risk his reputation, maybe his life, or turn away and let her fate unfold. Outside, the wind had shifted, carrying the sound of hoofbeats and distant shouts. Neighbors, strangers, men who judged fur, and asked questions, never. He stepped back and surveyed the barn. There were places to hide her, but only temporarily. If anyone came close enough to peer inside, "Please," she murmured again, voice cracking, "I don't want your judgment. I don't want anyone's. Just help me." Daniel's eyes swept the room, the hay bales, the shadows, the lantern casting trembling light across the floorboards. Every option felt dangerous, morally fraught. His conscience gnawed at him. He'd spent years avoiding trouble, keeping his life small and predictable, but the rawness of this plea, this impossibility, pushed him beyond the edge of safety. A sudden rap at the barn door made both of them jump. Daniel froze. Heart hammering, he crept toward the sound. The knocks came again, 3 sharp, deliberate taps. Someone outside already suspected, already hunted. He looked back at her. "I don't know who's out there. Could be lawmen, could be worse. If I hide you, it's my word against theirs. Are you ready for that? Her silence answered him before her trembling nod did. The door rattled, as if testing itself against the frame. The shadows outside grew longer, darker. Daniel tightened his jaw, gripping the revolver and the weight of a choice that might cost him more than he had ever imagined. And then, through the thin planks, came a whisper not meant for him. "She's here. I can see her. Don't let him fool you." Daniel pressed his back against the barn wall, every sense alert. Outside, the hoofbeats had multiplied, uneven and hurried, like a pack of predators circling their prey. Dust spiraled in the lantern light that leaked through the cracks in the door. "They're coming closer," the woman whispered, voice tight as wire. She clutched the medallion to her chest as though it alone could shield her from the gathering danger. Daniel's mind raced. The nearest neighbors were miles away, the nearest lawman even farther. And these weren't ordinary pursuers. They moved with the cold precision of men who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. He could hear the scrape of boots against wooden boards as one of them crept closer, voice low, muttering names he didn't recognize. "Daniel," the woman said, a tremor breaking through. "They'll kill us if they find it." He nodded once, slow, deliberate. "Then we stay quiet. Every sound could be our last." The barn groaned under the wind, and somewhere, a tin bucket tipped over. Daniel froze as the noise echoed. Someone outside stiffened. Footsteps shifted, whispered commands. The air tasted metallic and tense. He crouched low, gripping the lantern in one hand, Colt in the other, listening. A shadow appeared at the edge of the door. A man's face, partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, narrowed as his gaze swept the barn's interior. He wasn't alone. Muffled voices and the scrape of more boots indicated at least 4 more approaching. Daniel's pulse hammered. He had never wanted bloodshed, but the choice had already been made. He would not let them take her. One of the pursuers whispered, "She can't be far. He won't hide her forever." Daniel's mind mapped every option. Escape, barricade, bluff, but nothing offered certainty. His eyes flicked to the woman, the flicker of hope in her wide, panicked gaze. She was too young, too fragile for the storm descending upon them. A sudden loud crash, a lantern outside toppled, illuminated the shadowed figures, just long enough for Daniel to see the glint of a knife, the curl of a rifle barrel, and the cruel certainty in their expressions. He realized in that instant the impossible truth. There would be no easy way out. The medallion she carried was a beacon, drawing the worst kind of men toward them, and every second wasted could be their last. "Stay behind me," he hissed, nudging her down toward the hay bales. And then one of the men called out, voice rough, deliberate. "Daniel Morrow, open up! She's not yours to protect!" The barn door shuddered under a forceful kick, splinters flying, and the night exploded into the sound of shouted commands, frantic horse hooves, and the unmistakable click of guns being readied. The chaos outside the barn pressed in like a living thing, but inside, Daniel and the woman moved carefully, silently, between shadows and stacks of hay. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind through the gaps felt amplified. Yet in that fragile space, a different rhythm began, one of quiet gestures and whispered truths. He handed her a small tin of beans and water from his saddlebag, a gesture simple, almost mundane, yet laden with reassurance. She accepted it with trembling hands, barely able to meet his eyes. I haven't eaten in days," she murmured, voice cracking like thin ice. Daniel crouched beside her, scraping the beans into the palm of her hand. "Better than nothing," he said softly. He studied her face, the streaks of dirt, the bruises, the raw terror. And for a moment, all he saw was a human being who had survived far more than any child should. She ate quickly, not out of hunger, but out of instinct, and as she chewed, her hands relaxed slightly. The medallion lay between them now, a silent tether connecting their fates. "You don't have to explain it all," Daniel said. "Not tonight, but someone's after it, yes?" She nodded. "It belonged to my father. He said it was cursed, that some men would do anything to possess it. I didn't believe him, until now." His eyes softened. He recognized the weight of inheritance, of history pressing down on a young life. "Then we keep it safe, for him and for you." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, hoofbeats and distant shouts lingered like ghosts. Inside, they shared an unspoken understanding. Survival wasn't just about guns or hiding. It was about trust, about recognizing another soul caught in impossible circumstances. She finally ventured a question, quiet, hesitant. Why help me? You don't even know me. Daniel shrugged, a small, rueful smile tugging at his lips. Some things you just do because it's right, not because it's easy or safe. Because if you don't, who will? The barn fell into a fragile, tense quiet again. Each sound outside, hoof, snap of a branch, whispered curse, reminded them that danger hadn't gone, only paused. And yet, in that moment, hope flickered. A distant whistle carried on the wind, not friendly, not benign, someone else was coming. The woman froze. Daniel's eyes followed hers. Another rider, he whispered. She pressed the medallion to her chest. Not them too. Daniel gritted his teeth. We faced them together, one way or another. And in that shared glance, something unspoken passed. A fragile bond, born in fear, anchored in trust, with the night still alive and threats pressing closer. The barn door exploded inward with a final violent kick, splintered wood flying into the dim lantern light. Daniel pivoted, Colt raised, and the woman ducked behind a stack of hay, her hands tightening around the medallion. The men outside, 4, maybe 5, fanned out, rifles ready, faces twisted with intent. Daniel's voice cut through the chaos, low and unwavering. Back off! She's under my protection. A tall man with a scarred cheek laughed, voice rough as gravel. Protection? You're just another fool, Daniel. Hand her over and maybe we let you walk. Daniel's jaw clenched. There was no negotiation here, no clever bluff that could erase the threat. It was a stand, one they might not survive. But he couldn't back down, not now, not after the trust they had forged, however fragile. Time seemed to slow. The woman peeked over the hay, eyes wide, breath shallow. She lifted the medallion in trembling hands, almost as if offering it to the approaching men. Daniel caught her wrist. No, it stays with you. Whatever happens, it stays with you. Gunshots cracked outside, shattering the night, and Daniel fired once, a precise shot that struck the ground near the leader, sending a shower of gravel in his face. Chaos erupted. Men shouted, horses whinnied. The barn itself trembled with the assault. But in the midst of the danger, a sudden lull, a shift in the wind, the sound of riders halting just beyond the barn, brought clarity. The leader cursed, signaling a retreat. Perhaps Daniel's defiance, the threat of more harm than the pursuers were willing to risk, bought them a fleeting reprieve. Daniel lowered the Colt, chest heaving. The woman stepped from behind the hay, face pale, eyes still wide. You saved me, she whispered, almost disbelieving. No, he said quietly, eyes scanning the darkened horizon. We saved each other. They stayed like that for a long moment, the world beyond the barn door silent. The danger temporarily abated but not gone. The lantern flickered, casting shadows that danced across their faces, the medallion glinting faintly, holding stories and burdens neither would ever forget. Days later, the law would come, neighbors would ask questions, and the medallion would be locked away where only trust could reach it. But in that night, in that barn, they had found something rarer than safety, a fragile human connection, tested under fire, undeniable in its truth. Years later, she would remember the weight of that night, not the fear, not the barn danger boaster, but the quiet act of someone believing she was more than her circumstance, the unspoken promise that even in the harshest world, trust could endure. Daniel watched her leave the barn at dawn, horizon glowing orange behind her. The medallion pressed lightly in her hand, hope etched in her stance, danger receding but never forgotten. And as the first horse whinnied in the distance, Daniel Morrow lowered his hat, eyes lingering on the fading silhouette, and the barn settled into silence, still, raw, and waiting.